The galaxy had known peace for 300 years. 12 species had come together to form the Galactic Compact. They traded with each other. They shared knowledge. They built stations where beings from different worlds could meet and talk. War became a memory, something that belonged to the past. The galaxy was safe. Then the came. They arrived from the dark space beyond the galactic rim, where no explorer had ever traveled. Their ships were black and massive, covered in strange metals that seemed to drink in light. They moved through space like a plague, spreading from system to system with terrible speed. The first world to fall was Prime. They were a peaceful species. They had beautiful cities made of crystal and light. They were artists and poets. They believed that all thinking beings could find common ground through reason and understanding. They did not come to talk. Their fleet appeared without warning. They sent messages of greeting. They offered trade. They offered friendship. They answered with fire. In 6 days, Prime was nothing but ash and broken stone. 8 billion died. The survivors fled into space on whatever ships they could find, carrying only the clothes on their backs and the horror in their eyes. The Galactic Compact responded with outrage. They sent a fleet of 500 warships to meet thee and demand answers. The fleet was the pride of 12 species, crewed by the best soldiers and commanded by the most experienced admirals. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, not a single compact ship remained. They had not lost a single vessel. Panic spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The republics mobilized their entire military. They were warriors, proud and strong. They had never lost a war in their long history. They swore that they would break against their defenses like waves against rock. The republics fell in 2 weeks. They moved through their space without slowing. Battleships built to withstand anything crumpled like paper under weapons. Soldiers, brave beyond measure, died by the millions. They burned. Their colonies were erased. A species that had stood for 10,000 years was reduced to scattered refugees begging for shelter. Now the galaxy understood what they faced. They were not invaders seeking territory. They were not conquerors looking for tribute. They were something far worse. They were a force of nature, as unstoppable as gravity, as merciless as the vacuum of space. They broadcast a single message to every world in their path. The message was simple: kneel or die. Those who surrendered would be allowed to live as slaves. Those who resisted would be destroyed completely. There was no third option. There was no negotiation. Species after species made their choice. Most chose to kneel. They watched their neighbors burn and decided that slavery was better than extinction. They lowered their flags. They opened their borders. They bowed their heads and hoped that obedience would be enough to survive. It was never enough. They took what they wanted regardless of surrender. They enslaved populations. They stripped worlds of resources. They killed anyone who looked at them wrong. Submission bought time, nothing more. The slaves simply died slower than the rebels. On the edge of the galaxy, far from the center of compact space, humanity watched these events unfold with growing dread. Humans were young compared to the other species. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. Their fleet was small, their technology was basic, and their colonies numbered less than 50 worlds. In the grand scale of the galaxy, humanity was barely a footnote. Earth's leaders gathered in emergency sessions. They studied the reports coming from the front lines. They analyzed the weapons, their tactics, their ships. The conclusions were always the same. Humanity could not win a war against these invaders. Fighting would mean extinction. The Galactic Council, or what remained of it, sent humanity a message. The message advised surrender. It explained that resistance was pointless. It suggested that humans prepare tribute and submission documents. Perhaps, the Council said, they would find humans too insignificant to bother destroying. Perhaps they would simply pass Earth by. Many on Earth agreed with this logic. Politicians gave speeches about the need for realistic thinking. Generals explained that military resistance would only lead to faster death. Scientists calculated the odds and found them impossible. The smart thing to do, everyone agreed, was to keep quiet, stay small, and hope the storm would pass. Not everyone agreed. In bars and homes across human space, ordinary people watched the footage of burning worlds. They saw the refugees hollow-eyed and broken. They heard the last transmissions from ships as they died fighting. Something stirred in human hearts, something old and stubborn. It was not logical. It was not smart. But it was there. The feeling did not have a voice yet. It had no leader, no organization, no plan. It was just a quiet anger, a refusal to accept what seemed inevitable. It lived in the hearts of soldiers who had sworn oaths to protect. It burned in the minds of parents who looked at their children and could not imagine bowing to monsters. It whispered in the souls of people who had read too much history to believe that surrender ever truly saved anyone. But feelings alone could not stop the. Feelings could not destroy their ships or shield human worlds from their weapons. They continued their advance, and with each passing day, they grew closer to human space. The clock was ticking. Time was running out. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Vanguard changed course. They had found new prey. Their sensors had detected the signals of human civilization, the radio waves and ship engines that marked a living species. The hierarchs studied their data and saw nothing impressive. Humans were weak. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were primitive. They did not expect resistance. They never did. Every species they had encountered had either fought and died or surrendered and served. There was no other way. There had never been another way. They did not know that they were about to meet something they had never encountered before. They did not know that in the vastness of human space, one ordinary man was about to make an extraordinary choice. They did not know that the word no could be a weapon. But they would learn. The refugees came first. They arrived in broken ships held together by hope and emergency repairs. They came from worlds that no longer existed, carrying nothing but memories and wounds. They filled the stations at the edge of human space, thousands of beings from a dozen different species, all telling the same story. They could not be stopped. Captain Elias Vance stood at the viewing window of Outpost Sigma 7 and watched another refugee ship dock. The vessel was built, but it flew no flags. Its hull was with weapon burns. Through the transparent docking tube, Vance could see the passengers stumbling out. They moved like people who had forgotten how to hope. Vance was 53 years old. He had served in the United Earth Navy for 30 years. He had never fought in a real war because there had been no wars to fight. He had spent his career patrolling trade routes, chasing pirates, and protecting mining operations. His ship, the UES Defiant, was a patrol cruiser. It was fast and reliable, but it was not built for battle against an enemy like the. He watched a warrior help a child down the docking ramp. The warrior's arm was bandaged, and he walked with a limp. The child clung to him with desperate strength. They had probably never met before the escape. Now they were all each other had. The station commander, a tired woman named, walked up beside Vance. She handed him a data tablet. "Latest orders from Earth Command," she said. Her voice was flat. Vance read the message. It told all frontier vessels to avoid contact with the. It instructed captains to withdraw to core systems if the enemy approached. It explained that negotiations were being attempted and that military action would only make things worse. "They want us to run," Vance said. "They want us to survive," replied. "There is a difference." "Is there?" Did not answer. She looked out at the refugee ship. More passengers were coming out now, carrying small bundles and injured companions. Some of them were crying. Most were too exhausted for tears. "I spoke with some of the survivors yesterday," said quietly. "They told me about the final battle for their 50,000 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled by any species. They threw everything they had at the." "What happened?" The battle lasted 6 hours. The destroyed maybe 200 enemy vessels. The destroyed all 50,000. Hands tightened on the railing. 200 against 50,000. Those are not odds. That is mathematics telling us to give up. Vance said nothing. He understood the math. He had run the numbers himself 100 times. Human ships were slower than ships. Human weapons were weaker. Human shields could not withstand firepower for more than a few seconds. On paper, humanity had no chance at all. But paper did not show everything. Over the following days, more refugees arrived. They brought more stories, each one worse than the last. They told of worlds that had surrendered peacefully and been enslaved anyway. They told of populations worked to death in mining camps. They told of children taken from parents and never seen again. They did not want peace. They wanted obedience, absolute and eternal. Surrender did not save anyone. It just meant dying on your knees instead of your feet. Back on Earth, the government continued to argue about what to do. Some leaders wanted to fight. Most wanted to negotiate. A few wanted to flee, to pack whatever ships they could and run for the edges of the universe, hopping to find somewhere that would not follow. The military was split as well. Young officers, full of fire and idealism, demanded action. Old admirals who understood the numbers counseled patience. The debates went round, and while humans argued, they grew closer. Vance received orders to return the Defiant to Earth for reassignment. The frontier outposts were being abandoned. Resources were being pulled back to protect the core worlds. It was a sensible strategy. It was probably the right thing to do. He did not go. Instead, he took the Defiant to Seven, a small colony world at the very edge of human space. The planet was nothing special. It had been settled 40 years ago by farmers and miners looking for a quiet life. The population was about 40,000 people. They had no military value, no strategic importance, nothing that would matter in a galactic war. But they were human. They were families and children and old people who had worked hard to build something from nothing. They had schools and hospitals and farms. They had lives. The colonists welcomed the Defiant with relief and confusion. They had heard the news from Earth. They knew that the frontier was being abandoned. They had expected to be left alone. "Why are you here, Captain?" the colony governor asked. She was a sturdy woman named, with gray hair and hands roughened by years of farm work. Vance looked out at the colony from the governor's office window. He could see children playing in a park. He could see farmers working in fields of golden grain. He could see people living their lives, unaware of the darkness coming for them. "Someone has to be," he said. Studied him for a long moment. Earth Command ordered all ships back to the core. "You are disobeying direct orders." "Yes." "They could court-martial you." "They would have to survive first." Almost smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. "What do you think you can do against the with one patrol cruiser?" Vance thought about the question. He thought about the refugees he had seen, the stories he had heard, the numbers that said resistance was pointless. He thought about his crew, 63 men and women who had signed up to protect humanity, not to run away. "I do not know," he admitted. "But I know what I cannot do. I cannot leave these people to face the darkness alone. I cannot tell those children that no one thought they were worth protecting. I cannot look at myself in the mirror if I run." Nodded slowly. "My grandfather used to say something. He said that there are moments when a person has to choose who they are. Not who they want to be, not who they pretend to be, but who they really are in their heart." She turned to face Vance fully. "It sounds like you have made your choice." "I have." "Then God help you, Captain. God help us all." That night, Vance gathered his crew in the Defiant's mess hall. He told them the truth. He told them that orders had come to withdraw. He told them that he was going to disobey those orders. He told them that anyone who wanted to leave could take a shuttle to the nearest station with no punishment and no shame. No one left. They were not heroes. They were ordinary people, mechanics and pilots and engineers. They had families waiting for them back home. They had futures they wanted to live. But they also had something else, something that could not be measured or calculated. They had the stubborn human refusal to abandon those who needed them. 3 days later, the vanguard arrived in the system. The time for choices was over. The time for consequences had begun. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. 40 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, black shapes against the stars, beautiful and terrible. On the bridge of the Defiant, Lieutenant was the first to see them on the sensors. Her face went pale. Her hands trembled over her console. She had read the reports about ships. She had seen the footage of battles. But reading and seeing were different from knowing that those ships were here now, coming for her. "Captain," she said, her voice barely steady, "we have contacts, 40 vessels, signatures confirmed." Captain Vance rose from his command chair. He walked to the main and stood there, hands clasped behind his back. The screen showed nothing but stars yet. The enemy was still too far away for visual contact, but he could feel them out there, a weight pressing against his mind. "Time to intercept?" he asked. "At their current speed, they will reach 7 in approximately 4 hours. 4 hours, that was all the time in the world. That was no time at all. The communication officer, a young man named Tors, looked up from his station. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Priority Alpha." "Put it through." The message played over the bridge speakers. It was Admiral, the commander of Earth's Defense Forces. Her voice was tired and strained. "To all vessels in the frontier sectors, this is a general order. Do not engage forces under any circumstances. Repeat, do not engage. Withdraw to designated rally points immediately. Negotiations are in progress. Any hostile action will be considered a violation of direct orders and will be dealt with accordingly. Earth Command out." The bridge was silent. Everyone was looking at Vance. He thought about the order. He thought about what it meant. Negotiations. As if they had ever negotiated. As if surrender had ever saved anyone. The admirals back on Earth were trying to buy time, he knew. They were hoping that if humanity stayed quiet and small, they might pass them by. It was a fool's hope, but he understood it. Fear made people believe in impossible things. "Sir," Lieutenant said, "what are your orders?" Vance turned to face his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw something else. Trust. They were waiting for him to tell them what to do. They would follow him into fire if he asked. "Tors," he said, "open a channel to the colony." The connection was made. Governor appeared on the screen. Behind her, Vance could see the chaos of an emergency evacuation. People were running, carrying children, loading belongings onto transports. "Captain Vance said, "We have received the Earth Command order. I am beginning evacuation procedures, but we do not have enough ships. We can save maybe 10,000 people. The rest—" She could not finish the sentence. "Governor, I need you to send that evacuation fleet toward the inner system. Get as many people out as you can." "What about you?" Vance looked at where the distant dots of ships were now becoming visible. "I am going to buy you time." Stared at him. "Captain, that is 40 warships. You have 1 cruiser. You cannot possibly." "Governor," Vance's voice was gentle but firm, "I know the odds, just get your people out. That is all I ask." Was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded, her eyes bright with tears she would not let fall. "Good luck, Captain, and thank you." The channel closed. Vance turned back to his crew, set an intercept course, all hands to battle stations. The alarms began to sound. Throughout the ship, men and women ran to their posts. Engineers checked power systems. Gunners loaded weapons. Medical teams prepared for casualties that everyone knew would come. On the bridge, Tors spoke again. "Captain, we are being hailed by the flagship." On screen, the image that appeared made several crew members gasp. The hierarch was not like any species they had ever seen. It was tall and thin, with gray skin that seemed to absorb light. Its eyes were completely black, without pupils or whites. It wore armor that looked like it had grown from its body rather than been put on. When it spoke, its voice was cold and empty, like wind through dead trees. Human vessel, you have entered a restricted zone. You will power down your weapons and surrender immediately. Your species has been offered terms: submission or destruction. There is no third option. Vance straightened his uniform. He thought about all the species that had heard these words. He thought about all the worlds that had surrendered, hopping for mercy, finding only chains. He thought about the children on Seven, playing in parks, unaware that monsters had come for them. He thought about his own children, grown now, living on Earth. He thought about the world he wanted them to inherit. It was not a world of slaves. "This is Captain Elias Vance of the United Earth ship Defiant," he said. His voice was calm and clear, without anger or fear. It was simply a statement of fact. "You will advance no further. The colony of Seven is under my protection. These people are not yours to take. These lives are not yours to end." The hierarch tilted its head in almost curious gesture. "You are one ship, we are 40, you cannot stop us." "Maybe not," Vance agreed. "But I can make you pay for every kilometer you cross. I can make sure that you remember this system forever. I can show the galaxy that humans do not kneel." "This is foolishness. You will die." "Everyone dies, hierarch. The only question is what we die for." Vance took a breath. "I do not care what you have conquered. I do not care who has surrendered to you. I do not care about your empire or your power or your threats. Today, here in this place, the answer is no." The hierarch was silent for a long moment. Its black eyes studied Vance like a scientist examining a strange insect. "Very well," it said finally. "You have chosen destruction. It will be granted." The screen went dark. Around the bridge, crew members exchanged glances. They all knew what was coming. They all knew that they would probably not survive the next few hours. But something strange happened in that moment. The fear did not go away, but it changed. It became something harder, something sharper. Ensign Williams, the youngest member of the bridge crew, spoke up. "Captain, for what it is worth, I am glad I am here." Others nodded. A few even smiled. Vance looked at them, these ordinary people who had chosen to stand with him. He felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with courage and everything to do with pride. "All hands," he said, his voice carrying through every speaker on the ship. "This is the captain. In a few minutes we will engage a superior enemy force. I will not lie to you. The odds are against us, but we are not fighting for odds. We are fighting for the 40,000 souls on that planet below. We are fighting for the right to look our children in the eyes and tell them we did not run. We are fighting because some things are worth more than survival." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Today, the galaxy will learn what it means to face a human crew that has decided not to give up. Today, we will show them that there is a price for everything, even victory. Today, we stand." The response came from every station, every deck, every corner of the ship. Not cheers, but something quieter and stronger. Acknowledgement, acceptance, resolve. The Defiant turned to face the enemy fleet. The battle for Seven was about to begin. The first shots came at 14:32 hours, ship time. The Defiant fired from long range, her missiles streaking through space toward the formation. It was not an attack meant to destroy. It was meant to get their attention, to slow them down, to make them think. They did not slow down. Their point defense systems destroyed the missiles with contemptuous ease. Their formation did not waver. They continued towards Seven as if the Defiant was nothing more than an annoying insect. Captain Vance had expected this. He had studied every battle report he could find. He knew that they were used to overwhelming force, to enemies that either charged foolishly or fled in terror. They were not used to enemies who fought smart. "Helm, take us into the asteroid belt," Vance ordered. Lieutenant hesitated for only a second before obeying. The Defiant dove toward the dense ring of rocks that circled the outer edge of the system. It was dangerous territory. One wrong move could smash them against a boulder the size of a building. But the asteroids also provided cover. They followed. They had no choice. The Defiant was between them and their target. They had to go through her. The battle in the asteroid belt was chaos. The Defiant weaved between tumbling rocks, using them as shields. She would appear from behind an asteroid, fire a burst of weapons, then disappear again before they could lock on. She was too small to hurt them badly, but she was also too fast to catch easily. Chief Engineer Martinez worked miracles in the engine room. He pushed the engines harder than they were designed to go, somehow finding extra speed when it was needed most. His team ran from system to system, fixing damage almost as fast as it happened. The weapons crew, led by Lieutenant Commander, fired with precision and patience. They did not waste shots. Every missile, every energy beam was aimed at weak points. They could not destroy the ships, but they could hurt them. A damaged sensor here, a weakened shield there, small wounds that added up. They grew frustrated. They had never faced an enemy like this. Their usual tactics did not work. When they tried to surround the Defiant, she slipped through gaps in their formation. When they tried to chase her, she led them into asteroid collisions. When they tried to ignore her, she hit them from behind. An hour into the battle, the first ship fell. It was a small vessel, a scout ship that had gotten too close to the Defiant. Lieutenant Commander saw the opportunity and took it. A full missile spread, aimed at the engines. The ship's shields held, but the impact pushed it into the path of a massive asteroid. The collision was spectacular. The bridge crew did not cheer. There was no time for celebration, but something changed in that moment. They had proved that they could be killed. The battle continued. Torres kept the communication channels open throughout the fight. He broadcast everything on every frequency, sending the signal across the galaxy. He knew that people were watching. He knew that on 100 worlds, beings who had given up hope were seeing something they had never seen before. A single human ship, fighting an impossible battle, refusing to die. The Hierarch ordered more ships into the asteroid belt. The battle grew more intense. The Defiant took her first serious hit at 1547 hours. A beam weapon punched through her shields and tore a hole in her port side. 3 crew members died instantly. Vance did not have time to mourn. He ordered the damaged section sealed and continued fighting. More hits followed. The Defiant's shields began to fail. Her hull was covered in burns and holes. Systems went offline one by one. The ship that had been sleek and fast was becoming a wounded animal, still fighting but growing weaker. At 1623 hours, Helm Officer took a hit. A power conduit exploded near her station, throwing her across the bridge. She did not get up. Navigator took her place without being ordered. His hands were steady on the controls. At 1641 hours, the weapon systems went offline. Lieutenant Commander was killed trying to repair them. Ensign Williams, with no training in weapon systems, took over the manual targeting. His first shot missed. His second disabled a fighter. At 1658 hours, the Defiant destroyed her second ship. It was a cruiser this time, larger than the Scout. Chief Martinez had managed to overload the ship's main cannon for one massive shot. The beam cut through the cruiser's weakened shields and hit something vital. The explosion lit up the asteroid belt like a new sun. The galaxy watched. On Earth, millions of people gathered around screens, unable to look away. They saw the Defiant, burning and broken, still fighting. They saw the crew refusing to surrender. They heard Captain Vance's voice, calm and clear, giving orders as if this was just another patrol mission. Something stirred in human hearts. Other human ships scattered across the frontier received the broadcast. They had all been given the same orders to retreat. They had all begun to obey, but now they stopped. They watched. They listened. Captain Sarah of the UES Valor was 3 systems away when she saw the Defiant take another hit. She watched the small ship stagger but keep fighting. She heard Vance refuse a final offer of surrender from the helm. She said, her voice tight, "Turn us around." "Ma'am, our orders." "I know our orders," stood up from her command chair. "Turn us around, set course for system, maximum speed." The Valor turned. She was not alone. The UES Iron Promise turned. The UES Constellation turned. Even civilian ships, freighters, and transports with no weapons began moving toward. They could not fight, but they could help evacuate. They could be there. Back in the asteroid belt, the Defiant was dying. Her engines were failing. Her weapons were mostly gone. Half her crew was dead or wounded. The bridge was filled with smoke and the smell of burned metal. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Every system that could fail had failed or was failing. But she was still flying. She was still fighting. They had lost 4 ships now, 4 ships against 1 human cruiser. It was unheard of. It was impossible, and yet it had happened. The Hierarch ordered the remaining fleet to concentrate fire on the Defiant. There would be no more games. There would be no more mistakes. The human ship would be destroyed completely. Torres looked up from his console. His face was covered in blood from a cut on his forehead. "Captain, I am picking up multiple signals. Human signatures. They are coming." Vance felt something in his chest. It might have been pride. It might have been hope. It might have been the simple joy of knowing that he had not stood alone. "How many?" Torres checked his readings. His eyes widened. 17 ships, sir, and more are changing course every minute." They detected them too. The Hierarch hesitated. 17 ships were nothing compared to his fleet, but they were coming. And behind them more might follow. How many humans were willing to die for this worthless colony? How many would come after these? For the first time in living memory, a fleet hesitated. Vance saw the moment. He knew what it meant. The battle was not about ships anymore. It was about will. It was about showing the something they had never encountered, an enemy that would not stop, no matter the cost. "All hands," Vance said, his voice reaching every corner of the ship. "This is the captain. We have done what we set out to do. We have shown them what humans are made of. Whatever happens next, remember this: we stood. We did not kneel, and that can never be taken from us." The Defiant turned toward the flagship and accelerated. One final charge, one final message. The humans were coming. The Defiant died at 1742 hours. She went down fighting, her remaining weapons firing until the very end. Captain Elias Vance stood on his shattered bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his crew, and watched the flagship grow larger on the cracked. He did not flinch. He did not look away. His last transmission was recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. In it, his voice was steady and calm, the voice of a man who had made peace with his death. "This is Captain Vance of the Defiant. We are going down, but we are not giving up. To everyone watching, remember this moment. Remember that one ship can make a difference. Remember that the only defeat that matters is the one you accept. They can kill us, but they cannot make us kneel." A pause, the sound of explosions in the background. "To my family, I love you. To my crew, I am honored to have served with you. To humanity, do not mourn us. Fight for us, live for us, and never ever surrender." The transmission ended. The fleet destroyed the Defiant with concentrated fire. The ship broke apart in a blinding explosion, scattering debris across the asteroid belt. There were no survivors. 63 human beings died in an instant, their bodies becoming part of the stars. But something else was born in that moment. The Hierarch had expected the human reinforcements to turn back when they saw the Defiant's destruction. That was what sensible beings did. They saw overwhelming force and they retreated. It was the natural order of things. The human ships did not turn back. They accelerated. The 17 ships that had been coming became 23, then 30, then 40. They came from every direction, jumping into the system without formation or coordination. Some were warships, many were not. Freighters, transports, mining vessels, anything that could fly and had a human crew. They were not enough to defeat the fleet. Everyone knew that. The humans knew it, but the humans came anyway. And then something unprecedented happened. Other ships began to arrive. Not human ships. A destroyer, battered and from months of running, dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took position beside the human fleet. Then a cruiser, her crystal hull cracked but still beautiful. Then 3 ships from the Republic, a species that had surrendered months ago. They had all watched the Defiant stand. They had all seen Captain Vance refuse to kneel, and something in them had changed. The hierarch watched his sensors with growing disbelief. More ships were coming. Every minute more signals appeared. The fleet gathering against him was still smaller than his own, still weak by standards, but it was growing. And behind it, across the galaxy, other signals were beginning to move. For the first time, the hierarch felt something unfamiliar. It took him a moment to recognize it, because it was an emotion his species had not experienced in thousands of years. Uncertainty. They had conquered through fear. They had taught the galaxy that resistance was pointless, that submission was the only survival. But the Defiant had shown something different. One ship, one crew, one stubborn human captain had demonstrated that they could be hurt, could be slowed, could be made to bleed. If one ship could do that, what could 100 do? 1,000, 1,000,000? The hierarch made a decision. He ordered his fleet to withdraw. Not retreat, he told himself. Strategic repositioning. They would return with a larger force. They would crush this rebellion completely. But as his ships turned and jumped to faster than light, everyone watching knew the truth. The had blinked first. The battle for 7 was over. The humans had won. In the days that followed, the galaxy transformed. On Earth, the government that had counseled surrender was swept away. New leaders emerged, people who had watched the Defiant stand and understood what it meant. They did not promise easy victory or quick peace. They promised something harder and more valuable. They promised to fight. The shipyards of Earth began working around the clock. Factories that had been building consumer goods switched to military production. Scientists unlocked technologies that had been deemed too dangerous or too expensive. Volunteers lined up by the millions, people who wanted to serve, who wanted to be worthy of the crew of the Defiant. The other species of the Galactic Compact began to stir as well. The survivors stopped running and started organizing. The refugees transformed their sorrow into determination. Even species that had fully surrendered began to resist, staging sabotage and rebellions across territory. The war was far from over. They were still powerful, still dangerous. They would return. They would fight back. Many more would die before the end. But something fundamental had changed. They had built their empire on the belief that they were unstoppable. That belief was gone now. Captain Vance and his crew had destroyed it as surely as they had destroyed those 4 ships. On 7, the colonists who had survived began to rebuild. They had lost friends and family in the evacuation. Their world bore scars from weapons that had slipped past the Defiant, but they were alive, they were free, and they remembered. 1 year after the battle, they built a monument. It stood in the central square of the colony's main city, visible from anywhere in the settlement. The monument was simple, a column of black metal from the wreckage of the Defiant, recovered from the asteroid belt. At the base of the column, they carved Captain Vance's final transmission. But above it, in letters that could be seen from space, they carved just one word. The word that had changed everything. The word that had turned the tide of a galactic war. No. That word spread across the stars. It was translated into 1,000 languages. It was painted on the hulls of warships and whispered in the cells of prisoners. It became a rallying cry, a prayer, a promise. When they returned, as everyone knew they would, they did not find a frightened galaxy waiting to submit. They found an alliance of free species, united by the example of one human ship and her crew. They found enemies who had learned that they could be defeated. The final war took 7 years. It cost billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. It was the most destructive conflict in galactic history. The lost. They did not lose because humanity was stronger or smarter or more numerous. They lost because Captain Elias Vance had taught the galaxy a truth that they had never understood. There are some things more powerful than fear. Honor is one. Love is another. But the most powerful of all is the simple refusal to accept defeat. Centuries later, children across the galaxy would learn about the Battle of. They would hear the story of the Defiant, of her captain, of the 63 crew members who chose to die rather than kneel. They would learn that the mightiest empire in known space was brought down not by weapons or tactics, but by a single word. In classrooms on 1,000 worlds, teachers would ask their students what that word meant, and the students would answer, in their own languages, in their own ways, but always with the same understanding. It meant that courage was not